If you look at the chart in front of you, the approximate weight of the subject matter is indicated on the right-hand side. The higher the percentage, the more questions you'll likely see on the exam in that area. If you're new to the cloud, I suggest you supplement this learning with a little bit more study. We have a wonderful Microsoft Learn course which maps directly to this course with extra reading materials, outside links, case scenarios, and quizzes. I highly recommend it. Let's begin with Module 1, Azure Cloud Concepts. In Module 1, we'll look at cloud models, including public, private, and hybrid cloud. We're going to look at cloud benefits and considerations, and look at why customers are moving to the cloud. And then we're also going to look at cloud services and a term called shared responsibility. Cloud models. In cloud models, we're going to define what cloud computing is. We're going to look at the public, private, and hybrid cloud models, and then we're going to compare the three models together. So what is cloud computing? It's the on-demand access to a shared pool of computing resources. They are normally located around the world, and these resources can be anything from servers, networks, storage, database, applications, etc. The resources that you use can be provisioned and released with minimal effort. You don't need any deep technical skill to use the public cloud. Public cloud. It is owned by a cloud services or hosting provider. They provide resources and services to multiple organizations and users. These users normally access the network via a secure connection, typically over the internet. There's no deep technical skills required to use the public cloud, and the service is usually available to everyone, the public. The private cloud, on the other extreme, is owned by an organization. It is normally only limited to that organization, and the organization is responsible for everything, from actually purchasing the hardware, to the updates, to the networking and the security, everything. The organization does not normally allow public access to their resources. It is normally private. And then we have hybrid cloud. It is a combination of public and private cloud. The organization decides what resources they're going to put in the cloud and which ones they're going to keep in their own private cloud. Deep technical skills are required to maintain the private cloud and also ensure that both clouds can operate together efficiently. There's flexibility. The organization decides what is in the private cloud and what is in the public cloud, and they're able to meet any compliance regulations regarding security or data requirements. So let's take a look at the three models again. Public cloud, we talked about that. The organizations pay for only what they use in the cloud. It's available to the public, and there's no capital expenditure needed to scale up resources. The other extreme is private cloud, where the hardware has to be purchased by the organization who is running that cloud. Deep technical skills are required for the maintenance and updates of this private cloud. The organization normally has complete control of the resources and do not let the public access it. And then there's hybrid cloud, the most flexible of the three cloud models. The organization will determine which applications and resources run where, meeting any data requirements and compliance regulations they need to meet. So let's take a look at cloud benefits and considerations. Cloud benefits. We are going to look at some key terminology regarding the cloud. We're also going to look at capital expenditure and operational expenditure. We're going to look at what a consumption-based model is. So why is everyone moving to the cloud? There must be a reason. The 8 terms in front of you are probably the biggest reasons customers are moving to the cloud. Let's start at the top. High availability. What is that? It's the ability to keep resources up and running for long periods of time with very little downtime. Then there's scalability. So we have 2 different terms, scaling out, which is horizontal scaling, which means adding more resources or servers or virtual machines as you need them. And then there's scaling up, adding to existing resources either by adding more CPU or adding more memory. Global reach, another big benefit of the cloud, is being able to access resources and put your resources around the world. And then Agility, the ability to react quickly to workload demands. Do you have a sudden spike in traffic? Do you need to allocate more resources? Or do you have a sudden slowdown and need to deallocate resources? Fault tolerance is that ability to remain up and running if a component or service has a failure or no longer working. We all know what it's like to when you turn on your computer and you have that tap, tap, tap noise, meaning your hard drive is not working. Well, in the cloud, there's all sorts of ways of protecting yourself against that. And then we have elasticity, similar to scalability, but I want you to think of elastic band. So an elastic band, when you pull it, when you release it, it goes back automatically. That is elasticity, the ability to automatically increase or decrease resources as needed. Customer latency, you want to be as close to your customers as possible to reduce the latency for them accessing your resources. So now with the cloud, with that global reach, you can put resources around the world, putting them as close to your customers as possible. And then predictive cost. It goes with a calculator we'll look at later, helping you determine the actual cost of what you're going to spend in the cloud before you spend it. No one wants that surprise bill at the end of the month where they thought it was a certain number and it's double or triple. In the cloud, you're able to quote what you're going to spend before you actually spend it. And that we'll take a look at coming up soon. Let's talk about expenditure models. We have capital expenditure, or CapEx as it's known, is the upfront spending of money on physical infrastructure. When we needed to create our own data center, we had to get budgets approved, buy a space or have a location, go out and physically buy those resources, and then network them all together, put them all together to build our own data center. So that's a capital expenditure model. In the cloud, we don't need to do that. We are spending as we need it, and that's operational expenditure, OpEx. So the expenses are normally deducted in the same year, and you're paying monthly or yearly for those expenses. So capital expenditure versus operational expenditure. Consumption-based model, another huge benefit of the cloud. Previously, when we used to have our own data centers, we'd have to plan for those spikes in traffic in the data center when we're actually building it. So most data centers would run at 50 to 60% of their actual capacity, having room for that spike whenever it happened. In the cloud, we don't have to spend that money up front, and we don't have to plan for that in advance. We use the resources as needed and pay as we use them. Think of it like your utility bill. You have a meter on it and you pay by what you actually use. The same thing in the cloud. You're paying by what you actually use. And if you don't need a resource anymore, you can deallocate it or remove it from the cloud. So let's talk about cloud services. Cloud services. We actually have three different types of cloud service models. The first one being IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service. The second one, PaaS, which is platform as a service. And then we have SaaS, which is software as a service. Each contain different levels of managed services. You can use a combination of these types of services depending on what you require. For example, you can use Microsoft 365 for your company's computers, which is SaaS. In Azure, you can host your VMs, which are an IaaS model. And you can use Azure SQL Database, which is a PaaS model to store your data. The cloud gives you that flexibility, and you can use any combination you choose. It's important to understand these different service models because they're used in conversation, documentation, and training. After that, we'll also talk about what a shared responsibility model is.